All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is the Echols Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Terrence Echols. And this week we had an amazing episode with one of my very good friends and coworkers. His name is Brian Havrilla. Brian is a social media content creator for the Cleveland Guardians. He's amazing at what he does, always turns out amazing content for the Guardians on behalf of the Guardians organization, and is very talented in many different ways as a creative mind and as a creative person. We had a great conversation, and I hope that you enjoy it. Before we get started, please don't forget to like this video. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and please don't forget, if you're listening on Apple and Spotify, to give a positive rating or a positive review if you like what you hear. And without further ado, here is my podcast with my friend, Brian Havrilla. All right. So, Brian, you were telling me earlier today that you've never been on a podcast before, and yet you were wondering the type of questions that I was going to ask, right?
That's true.
And I'm going to start off with a pretty easy question, simple and easy question. So I'm just going to ask you to answer it as honest as you can. And that is, why did you cheat in the office softball tournament? So talk to me about your cheating scandal and why it's worse than what Jim Harbaugh is doing in Michigan right now.
Funny you should talk about the Jim Harbaugh, Michigan controversy that's going on right now, because there's one of our co-workers, Barry Tripp, big Michigan guy. The 6 years that I've been with the Guardians organization, he's talked about how that's the only honest football program in the country, and then Jim Harbaugh raises leaders of men. So it was really interesting to me that an honest and man full of integrity like Jim himself would be involved in such a controversy. So I just thought that was really interesting. So funny you brought that up, because the accusations against me as a cheater in the company softball tournament have come from that man himself, Barry Tripp.
Yeah, exactly. And me, because I was on Court's team.
Okay, so just to line it up for the viewers of this fine program here. The company softball tournament, usually every year. Haven't had one for a few years. But teams are picked at random. You have players rate themselves on a scale 1 to 5 skill level. Terrence probably put himself as a 5, because that's something he would do.
No, I put 3 because I haven't played in a while.
He probably put himself as a 5. Terrence, I'm going to need you to pull up for your users what that spreadsheet looks like, so they can see the 5 next to your name.
It's not a 5, I swear.
Anyway, Barry Tripp, the man
co-worker in question.
Yeah, the co-worker in question here, who's raised the accusations against me, rates himself annually as a 5. So he's made fun of by a lot of people in the organization. By a lot of people, I mean, a lot of people. And I think it's branched beyond our department at this point.
Yep.
But anyway, so the tournament, they'll flip a coin to determine who has the first round bye in the tournament. So it's completely random. And my team won the coin flip. We were the first round bye. So nothing we could do about it. We wanted to play. Nobody wants to sit around while everybody's having fun. Anyway, so my team, went undefeated through the tournament. Got to the championship to match up against Terrence's team in courts. And
we busted you guys.
So it was best of 3. Best of 3. So we lost the... actually, they had to beat us twice, because I think we had an undefeated record going into that. Had beaten them in the the tournament leading up to that point. But just as they decided who would have the first round bye via a coin flip, they determined who would be the home team for each game by a coin flip. Despite us having an undefeated record at that point. So unfortunately, the coin worked against us, and even though we were undefeated and had beaten your team to that point, we were the away team in the first game and the second game, both games. So we lost the first game. Probably would have won it if we were the home team. Final at bat's a big deal in co-ed softball. Anyway, but we fought adversity. I think it was a 1-run game in the final game of the day.
Yeah,
2-run. It came down to the wire. It was a pretty good battle between two juggernauts. But the accusations came against me as, I think it's important, actually, the context. A previous tournament we had played
Oh, God, yeah.
was similar. It was my team, Court's team, made it to the championship. And we got to the championship, had been playing with a hard softball, like, the entire day. Got to the championship on a different field. And they asked Court before the game if they wanted to play with the hard ball or the softball. Now, my team was like a doubles team, gap to gap, just spraying the ball all over the place.
Yeah.
So our strong suit was the offense, obviously. So he selected the softball, the ball that really you had to really get into it for it to leave the infield, which put us at a huge disadvantage because our game was gap to gap.
Yeah.
So for 2 years I had given Court a hard time that he cheated because he did. Proof was in the pudding there. Proof was in the pudding there.
Yeah.
So that's I think it was out of anger, a little bit of spite that those accusations came up. Despite he was just upset that we had won the coin flip to start the day, and we had nothing to do with that.
But I also was like, I wasn't happy either since I was on Court's team.
Well, yeah,
but I also was not happy because we're playing our first game. Like, we're getting all tired out there. Playing hard on defense, playing hard on offense.
Man.
Getting our big hits out of the way. Like, just getting tired, man. Just trying to put these teams away. Whereas I'm looking over at the field that you guys were on. You're just taking BP. And I was just like, oh, there they get to start the day with BP. All their hitters are going to be nice and warmed up and tuned up for.
I mean, I gotta say to the people out there, the hundreds of thousands of people that listen to this, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Somewhere around there.
Yeah. I mean, if you guys were really a good team, you could have coasted through those first couple of games. Everybody knows you're weeding out
and we did
the weak spots.
We did. I think we mercy ruled the first game, and the second game
you really didn't have to be taking your best swings of the day.
Yeah, true. We probably shouldn't have done that, but we also didn't know. We were testing our strengths. Seeing what we were as a team.
I mean, obviously we both work in baseball. The Atlanta Braves were next to unstoppable this year during the regular season.
That's true. That's true.
Run into a team that's hot at the right time, and so
you're right.
I don't know.
You're right. All right. All jokes aside, all co-ed softball aside.
All right.
Let's get into talking a little bit about your background. All right. So, for those who don't know, Brian is a social media. What's the proper word? Would you say you're a social media guru or a social media savant?
I don't like either of those words. So my job title, if we're being official, is content creation specialist.
Okay. All right. But yeah, Brian is the man to go to in the Guardians organization when it comes to some content being made, and I feel like you're a great person to have on here just because that's such a unique role, that's such a unique profession that's becoming more and more valuable each and every day. Just talk to me a little bit about your background and how that sort of played into the type of person you are today.
I just want to get this on here. AppSoPure, if you'd like to sponsor Terrence's podcast,
please.
Holding your bottle right here.
We were talking earlier today about sponsors, and I was like, "Yeah, you're like you have a sponsor, right?" And I was like, "No, I don't." So yeah, if anyone wants to
get Terrence sponsored,
please.
Yeah. So I missed the question because I was dialing that.
Oh man,
ready to go.
you're loading up that one. All right.
I'm so ready for that.
So basically, in the world of content creation and social media work and just creative pursuits in general, what was your sort of background in that, and like how did that lead you up to where you are? Probably let's start pre-college and then let's go to the college and then let's go post-college.
Man, you're asking for a lot. I'm old.
Yeah.
No, so I went to high school in the Northeast Ohio area. Did my variety of sports: basketball, football, track, a little bit of baseball growing up. So always had been interested in sports, always kind of wanted to work in sports, but didn't want to like subject myself to, getting a sport management degree or whatever and just like limit myself to that just in case priorities changed. So in high school, I took it was like a Photoshop class and an Illustrator class and just learned like really basic stuff. Was like, wow, this was kind of fun. Like, I think it was an alternate to either an art class or a computer type of class. So it was a nice little change of pace from like your normal like education stuff. So I found out maybe I was kind of halfway decent at that. Had never been good at like actual art, drawing, painting, anything like that. So I wasn't really sure that it would be something I'd end up working in. But got to college. I went to Lake Erie College, small Division II school, Northeast Ohio area in Painesville. Ran track there. Got involved in the athletic department and. Kind of carved away into doing some social media for them, a little bit of content creation. I'd never really taken classes outside of that high school class as far as like Photoshop went, Illustrator went. But I'd kind of take on projects and as I, was like looking for a certain way to do something, I'd, watch a YouTube video and watch another one and so on and so forth. So you can kind of learn anything on YouTube, which is amazing. So yeah, I ended up picking up Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere, like those kind of programs, the Creative Cloud, kind of getting good at it. So in college, that was kind of the start. Didn't really get paid to do that, or I forget how it was. It was so long ago at this point, but kind of developed that skill set, which kind of laid the foundation of like, okay, here's maybe what I want to do with this. Like, let's create content, let's do social media, and kind of blazed the trail of where I thought I wanted to go. So after college was over, I got my master's degree in business as well from Lake Erie. And while I was still in school, and shortly after I graduated, I was working at a small business on the east side that I spent my summers at during college. And they carved out a social media marketing kind of customer service role. Which was really nice and like really grateful for that opportunity to kind of start my career, and then had applied for an internship with the Cleveland baseball organization after the 2016 season.
Wow! So
that
was like
that was a long time ago.
Ages.
Yeah, so it was that World Series run. I had applied for their social media internship after that year. For the 2017 season and went through that whole process, interviewed, was a finalist, didn't get it. I think the person that they selected had more experience. It was me and one other person. But I stayed in touch with the person that filled the role before my current boss, the one he fills. And he told me that next year in like the summer that they were bringing on this position with Major League Baseball. So he kind of like shooed me through that process and got me to the front of that. Interviewed with them as the season was ending, and it was basically like I was told from the start, like the interview was with my old boss at MLB at the time, and he told me on the phone call, like, this job is yours, they want you, but like, let's get to know each other kind of thing. So it was pretty cool. To work in that role with MLB, kind of doing the exact same thing I'm doing now, for 4 seasons. 2021, they cut the program right before spring training, and Cleveland brought me on like part-time that year, full-time the next year.
Wow.
And I've kind of been there ever since. So I just wrapped up season number 6, but kind of hard to believe that like something I never really like went to school for, became a passion and ultimately something like
your career.
Yeah, I was doing full-time. So
that's pretty cool how it started off as just a class, like a replacement for your art class in high school, and now here you are with like a full-time job in a career working for a baseball organization at the highest level of sports.
Right.
It's an impressive journey that you've been through. When you were with MLB and working for them, were you in Cleveland? Like what was that sort of like? Were you in the building at Progressive, or were you just like
It was I think the best way to describe it's like a contract worker.
Okay.
So my paychecks came through MLB, but Cleveland, and I found that this wasn't the case kind of across the league, because there were, I think, 26 or 28 of the 30 teams had like taken my role from MLB. So it was basically MLB paying for another person to be added to like the social media team, like at each team.
Gotcha.
Was kind of the best way to describe that program, but not everybody took advantage of it. But the other 26, 28 people, like I found out it was a lot different at different organizations. Like Cleveland did a really good job and does a really good job with their interns or people that are kind of in those MLB roles of like opening their doors and kind of bringing them in the threshold of the company. So that was not the case at every organization, but Cleveland was and is good at that. So it was kind of like I was a member of the communications team without
just getting paychecks.
Yeah. Okay. So, at that point, like, after the program that I was in got cut, like, it was, I had tipped off, like, my contact with Cleveland because he wasn't technically my boss. And, people up the ladder from him that, it was looking like MLB was going to just cut the program, and they did. It was kind of a sudden thing. So at that point, like, I had phone calls, like, the day that conversation happened with MLB about, jumping on part-time that season and with a hope that it would turn into a full-time role, and kind of took it and ran, so.
Yeah. So you sort of, in a way, just bet on yourself, and, you didn't know whether or not you'd be offered that full-time, but you were like, I believe in myself, I believe in my abilities, I enjoy this organization, I think I can, do this full time. Can you talk a little bit more about just like that sort of mindset that you have to just bet on yourself and become that type of person who's just going to be like, I really want this, I really enjoy this, I think I can do this, and then just, just fall into it without any sort of, netting or safety, guards to be like, yeah, I think I'm going to get a full-time job. I think I'm going to end up successful. Just like, what were some of the things that you did to make you feel like that was a possibility, and what was your mindset during that time?
It's like a deep question. I like that.
I be asking the deep questions, man.
No, I mean, like, so I think I kind of looked at it. It was like the week before, like 4 days before spring. It was really bad timing, like MLB's part. That's a different story for a different time. But so it was kind of like, I think I interviewed a couple teams or organizations, like kind of in that bridge period between that layoff and jumping in the Cleveland organization, and that was like understood, like with the people that were trying to advocate for me in the Cleveland organization, that I was going to apply for these jobs because obviously full time was with job security is important. So
big time, yeah.
I interviewed maybe like 3 or 4 places in that period of time, and ultimately it kind of made sense to kind of bet on the hope that they were going to be able to bring me in full time, and if not, like at that point in time, like that would have been my 4th season. Like I've built up enough of a portfolio at this point that like had that season come and gone and that full-time opportunity wasn't there, I never really doubted that I'd be able to find something like full-time if I wanted to stick in sports or even outside of sports. So it was never really like a concern to me. It was kind of like just deal with the discomfort of these
not knowing, yeah.
These 6-8 months not knowing, and kind of ride that hope, just do a good job. At that point, I think I had made the connections like across the league, in different sports, like networking, that I felt like I was in a good spot. Like even if 8 months goes by and there's no full-time offer at the end of the road. So as far as like betting on yourself, I don't know. I've kind of always had the mindset that like, and I think it's different a little bit. Like I was an athlete growing up. Like,
yeah.
I could have, and I worked as hard as I could. Like I ran track at Lake Erie College. Like worked as hard as I could have. Like the reality is like I was never going to run in the Olympics, right? So like if you're talking sports, like athletic ability is a little different. But like if you're talking like the workplace, I think that transfers over really well because like work ethic, like you can get to be the best you can at your craft. It just takes a lot of work. So it was betting on myself is always kind of something I've done.
Yeah.
And kind of inherently, like I've always like wanted to outwork people. So was kind of second nature to me. It wasn't really a thought like, we got to do something different here. It was just kind of what's been embedded in me through years of sports, or just the people I've surrounded myself with. Like, I've kind of always inherently like believed in myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of that was a deep question. I like that.
Yeah, man. And I try to ask those types of questions because I don't think we have enough of these types of conversations where you can dive really into depth about how you got to where you are, because it's, like I said, it's an impressive feat to, I guess, sort of create your own mold and carve your own way into, a very competitive organization and very competitive industry. Like, I didn't know how lucky I was when I first started applying and going through the process. I didn't know how lucky I was to not only be considered, but to be selected as an intern for the Guardians organization.
Right.
Seeing the placement in terms of the different organizations that people who were once interns work for now, or people within the organization who were once interns who stayed with the organization. I didn't know that coming in. Like, I had no idea about the success rate. I had no idea about how prestigious it is. And yeah, I didn't understand much about the Cleveland Guardians / Indians organization when I was coming in. What did having that sort of background, being in Northeast Ohio, like, and seeing everyone in just being familiar with the Guardians brand and the Guardians organization, what did that, like, how did that factor into how you did the job, and like, how did that help you in a way? Because I feel like that might have helped you, just being so familiar with everything and being in this area for so long.
Yeah, so it's another good question. When I started with MLB, like I said, there were about 25, 28, I don't know how many exactly, like other me's basically across the league.
Right.
And they, like, when you first started in that role, they'll fly you out to their offices in New York and kind of give you like 3 or 4 days of training. And my old boss at that role, like, always said, like, don't be afraid to kind of be a fan. Like, you're the online voice for the team. Like, you're interacting with all these fans. Like, don't be afraid to like lean into that a little bit. Like, it's okay. Like, you're allowed to be a fan. You're allowed to be happy when good things happen, sad when bad things happen. Like, you don't need to like be this like brick wall of
professional.
There's a time and a place for that, for sure.
Right.
But like, you're playing a game of baseball. Like, it's ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a game. Or basketball, football, like whatever sport you're working in or looking to work in, like, it's a game. Like, it's supposed to be fun. Like, wins and losses are tough, and baseball's a long season, so like, have fun with it was basically what I walked out of New York with. So I think being a fan of my team kind of inherently helped me a lot off the bat. Knowing the players, knowing their personalities, kind of like, or at least public personas, like, I think that helped me kind of resonate with like a fan base or whatever, because I was a fan.
Well, yeah.
Like, so I think like I know people that have worked for multiple organizations, or will have an intern come in not from the area, like, doesn't really have emotional connections to the team, and it's like hard to kind of build that up. Like, I think you do over time, and like, things happen, ebbs and flows of a season. Like, you ride with wins and losses, and like, you get emotionally attached, but it takes a little bit of time.
Yeah.
So I think having that connection kind of off the bat helped me a lot. Helped me kind of be passionate about what I was doing, and like, kind of engaged in the work I was putting in, because it was like important. If it was important to me, like, as a fan, like, it's going to be important to like other fans, obviously. So
right.
Like, I think that was definitely like something that helped me initially kind of get off the ground.
Yeah. And, I think that's probably like a lot of people's dreams. Like, people who are just jumping into social media or jumping into any sort of media, I guess. Like, even if you talk to people who are studying journalism or broadcasting and stuff like that, they're like, it would be a dream to one day report on my favorite team or be a voice for my favorite team and all that. And, you've been able to accomplish that. So I think and you kind of helped me in a way when I first started. You've helped me a lot since I've been here, but when I first started off, you were very honest about how the organization usually performs and everything. And there are a couple early season losses that I really just took really hard because, as you can see, you probably have seen photos and stuff. Like, I get into games, like I'm very much like a huge fan of whatever program or I'm wearing Marist right now. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
big Marist guy.
Yeah, exactly. I support the different organizations and teams that I'm a part of, and there was a bunch of games early on in the season where we would lose them, and it would be tough games, and you basically explained this is how it goes. It'll get better. Don't get too down on yourself. Don't get too upset. This is how it goes. And then I turn around and the Guardians have the hottest offense in all of baseball in the month of June and have a bunch of young, exciting players that made it an exciting work environment, an exciting experience to come and watch every day. And like, just sort of having that was pretty cool, just because hearing that perspective from you, because it was all doom and gloom for a little bit, because
man, baseball fans are tortured. Like, it's just a sport like football. You play 17 games. You have a 1 week break between each one, give or take. And like, you got all that time to kind of like compartmentalize, your emotions in the team or whatever. Baseball, you don't get that. Like, you get quick 24-hour turnaround, and like, you got to forget about the last loss, otherwise they're gonna compile.
Yeah.
And it's hard. Like, baseball's a long season, so like, you're gonna probably have a 10-game losing streak and a 10-game winning streak. Like, that's just like the way it goes. It's 162 games. It's 9 months long. Like, is it 9 months? April through
8 months, around 7, 8. If you count
6 months of regular season baseball.
If you count spring training, it's like 7 and a half.
Yeah. If you make it to the postseason, like, it ends up being about 9. But it's a long season, so like, a lot of emotions. Like, you can't get too upset about the tough games you're gonna drop in April, because maybe those will turn into wins in June or July when you need them more.
Yeah, exactly. So and I appreciate you and the other people in the organization for just sort of explaining that reality to me, because it then eventually became something that was exciting and was really fun. Even with some of the close losses, I was like, man, but so and so did this or so and so did that, so I can at least pull this positive thing from it. Because at the end of the day, like, hey man, if we don't win, bro, I am not happy. I'm not happy at all. But yeah, man, that's pretty cool. And then I guess the next thing I was gonna ask you was, I'm sure you hear it all the time, and working in social media, it's such a toxic environment. I'm pretty sure we can all say that. Yeah. Because a lot of people are trolls, a lot of people get negative on there. And, creating content on behalf of, an organization that has hundreds of thousands of followers.
Right.
You probably hear and see a lot of bad, negative things. How do you sort of deal with it? And, like, what is sort of, what are sort of the things that you use to try to, not just combat it, because you can obviously have, we've seen a bunch of, witty remarks and witty comebacks from a lot of the major sports organizations and in their, accounts and stuff. And I'm sure you've done plenty of your own. But like, what's sort of our best practices in dealing with that? Because I'm sure you see it all the time. I'm sure it happens, or like, in undeserving amount. So, how is it dealing with that?
Yeah, I mean, toxic's a good word, because it is. Like, there's no shying around it. Like, you give everybody an opinion, and, some people are going to be louder than others, and, you know, they're allowed to express that, like, you know, for better or worse. That being said, like, yeah, working in social media, working for a sports team, you know, working 162 games, like, you're gonna see a lot of things that are like probably better off to not read. And you know, there's maybe points in the season where you just like you log off, like it's you can't dive into that stuff like, you know, 24/7. It's not good for, and that's something like I've over my 6 seasons like learned how to do better. Because like obviously like mental health's important, and you know being online 24/7 like takes a toll on that sometimes. So like I think I found ways to be able to decompress, compartmentalize stuff. Like I don't take any of that like personally ever, because like you can't, like it's the internet, it's people just kind of screaming into a void. So like the last thing you want to do is take that personally, because you know, you can always find somebody who has an opinion that upsets you, and life is too, you know, hard on its own to like take things personally and make it harder on yourself. So, I found ways to like, you know, maybe hobbies or something to like decompress after, you know, a long day of work, or, you know, you get an off day, and kind of learning to like, you know, the first couple of years, like I worked in baseball, it was like, if I had like the team had an off day, like, I, you know, still worked an 8-hour day or whatever, and like I think I've learned to like appreciate those off days and use them as off days, because you work so much from you know February through October, that you got to kind of give yourself a little mental reset every once in a while.
Yeah, and I think that's important. That's a good piece of advice for anyone who's even people who start to amass followings on social channels. It's like it's good to take, you know, a quick break, like, or even like schedule some posts to like, so you're still being treated well by the algorithms, but you're not exactly the one who's going on there and physically typing in the stuff and posting the posts. But yeah, that's really good advice. So, you know, segueing into, you know, you mentioned you've found some things to do on your off day, you know, hobbies and whatnot, and I know I don't know when you started getting into photography, but I know that you are big into your photography. You just took a huge trip. I don't know how many miles you drove. You could tell us, but yeah, what are some of the hobbies that you do, and then specifically more about like your photography and how that helps with your job as well.
Yeah, so picked up landscape photography. Actually, I'd call it like officially as a hobby, you know, 6 years ago. So like when I started in baseball, I kind of had always had the eye for photography. It always kind of interested me. You know, even dating back to high school, like they had photography classes, but you had to like buy your own camera. So there was always that kind of barrier to entry.
Yep.
So I would take, how it started, like, I'd go, do you know what urban exploring is?
No.
So there's like abandoned buildings kind of everywhere.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
So it's you know, going into, for better or worse, you know, going into it like abandoned buildings.
Train tracks, all that stuff.
Yeah, just like seeing, you know, people like graffitied walls, like, you know, just broken down kind of infrastructure, which was always kind of like cool to me to see. Like,
big time.
And I never owned a camera prior to that point. I'd call this like, say like 2015, 2016, 2017 maybe. So I'd go in there, you know, with my iPhone and like take pictures, and it was like, I was like, you know, I had the eye for it. Like I could tell like this was something maybe I wanted to kind of invest in. So yeah, when I started in baseball, I'd always told myself, like, once I kind of get a steady job beneath me, like I'm going to invest in this a little bit. So I bought a camera, bought a couple lenses, kind of picked it up. Like, again, YouTube. University taught me a lot, and kind of learned the ins and outs and got better over time. So I started that really in 2018, and when the baseball season ended that year, I'd always wanted to do a trip to New England. Like, that part of the country always interested me, you know, Boston, Portland, Maine, and kind of doing that during the fall was always something I wanted to do.
Big time.
So when the baseball season ended, I took a couple days off and, you know, just packed my car, went on a drive. And every year when baseball's ended, I've done a similar kind of trip. So this year, the drive he was just talking about, I drove into Portland the first day, up to Acadia for a night, Burlington, Vermont, and then Lake Placid, New York. I had to kind of consolidate it because I had to get back a day early.
Important reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Niece got baptized. So I think I left Lake Placid at like 4 a.m. to get back for that. But drove like 2,000 miles, just over 2,000 miles in like 4 days. But yeah, I mean, so landscape photography is a hobby I've picked up to kind of help me, I guess. It's one of those things like I found like, you know, in my adult life, like chasing peace is always something like I find myself doing. You know, like the world, the internet, everything's like so busy, so nonstop, so crazy. Like peace is something like that's hard to find. So like I found that like photography brings me peace. You know, hiking brings me peace. Traveling, so like going on solo road trips is not something that's like out of the question for me. Like I've done that plenty of times. Like will continue to do that. I've traveled with people, but like just getting to new places, seeing new things, like having new experiences, eating new food, like and that's something that like I've really enjoyed like learning how to do, and something like if ultimately like I could do that for a living, like a travel photographer, like would do that in a heartbeat.
Big time.
That would be like the dream goal. That being said, the barriers to entry to that are tough. Like you gotta find an in somewhere. So still kind of looking for that, but so with photography as well, like it kind of segues into the job. So like I do social media, I do content creation, but that also extends into photography, a little bit of videography. So like this year went to Seattle for the All-Star game. We had one player there, Jose Ramirez. So it was kind of like I basically followed him around the 2 days of All-Star activities as kind of at that point his personal photographer,
right.
Which he loved because you know he's him. But so I mean that was cool, and it's cool that like this skill that was kind of more or less like self-taught, like has turned into something I've used throughout my career.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people realize just a lot of the important skills that you have in your career. Like obviously you have to have some sort of, you know, I know you have your MBA, you have to have some sort of business acumen to, you know, thrive, especially in a professional sports organization, and you know, the different things that you studied in undergrad, I'm sure as well. But like a lot of the important essential skills that you need for your job were self-taught, sort of, you know, like you said, YouTube University. I don't think a lot of people value the self-taught skills and realize that they can really just turn into something that's, you know, lucrative and can lead to a lot of their success. What would you have to say to like people who are reluctant to start that journey into, you know, that sort of self-taught skill, and how that could just basically change everything for you?
This segment is brought to you by ApsoPure.
Wait, Brian, if they're not giving money, I'm not gonna advertise them.
Man, this is a pilot episode for them.
Oh,
They gotta see what the value is here.
True.
So it's kind of crazy like how much you can learn in just talking to other people, watching YouTube videos. Like I don't think there's a skill, honestly, at this point. Like, I mean, I wouldn't trust a doctor who's watching YouTube videos on how to perform surgery. But, like, outside of, like, the medical field or engineering, etc., like, any of those skills, you know, photography, design, cooking, like, man, you can learn anything on the internet. It's crazy. It's truly, the world's greatest textbook. And I would never, you know, tell someone not to get an education because I think that's important. Like, that being said, like, those skills, like, you're going to learn a lot, like, in your day-to-day, in work, in just your own experiences. So, like, school can teach you enough, and it does, but you can teach yourself anything, like, and don't be afraid to, like, overcome those type of. So an example of that, like I'm personally struggling with the like desire to get started. So I bought an acoustic guitar. I have no musical chops at all.
Oh, I've seen it. I've seen it in your apartment. Yeah.
So I bought an acoustic guitar on Facebook Marketplace. I'm going to teach myself how to play. No one's ever going to see me do it, but that's okay. Like, I just, like, want to learn. Like, I've reached a certain point in my, like, adulthood where, like, I don't, like, miss school necessarily, kind of the ins and outs of school, but I miss learning. And that's something, like, you don't have to stop learning. Like, just because you graduate school, like, keep learning. Like, learning is, like, knowledge is power, but, like, I don't. It's like fun to do. It's fun to like improve yourself. So like, I'm kind of I bought the guitar in September when the season was still going on, so I haven't really dove in. But like, I'm a little like hesitant because it's like a new skill. Like it's something I have no musical background at all.
Yeah.
No knowledge. I've picked it up a couple times, like tried finger placements and stuff, and like it's hard, and I know it's gonna be hard to learn, but like. There's enough stuff out there that, like, can dumb it down for me, who is a literal, like, when it comes to this stuff, like, I need things explained to me like a baby.
Yeah.
So I know I'm going to be able to find things that, like, will explain it to me that way. And, once I kind of overcome that first little bit of hesitancy, like, I know it's something, like, I can learn and will learn. Again, nobody will ever see me play it because, like, I have no desire to sit up on a stage, and I can't sing for the life of me, but, like...
I'll pay money though. I'll pay you good money to see you. I'm serious.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, I'm serious. Yeah. Yeah, especially if I get some sponsors.
Yeah, let's get some sponsors.
Yeah.
I could use the extra cash.
Yeah, but no, that's really cool. And I mean, I have no doubt that you're eventually going to get to the level to where you want to be, and then I also feel like you might get to that level to where you might have the itch to perform. You never know.
No, man. So, for Terrence to even get me on here, like, and talking about myself, like, that's an amazing hurdle to overcome. I've never been like, man, I like being behind the camera.
Right.
I like the attention off of me. Like, put it on other people. I think the worst part about, like, so let's say I'm a little photographer, sneaking around covering an event or something, like. Somebody's up on stage talking, and I'm, like, to the side of the stage, but, like, in sight of everyone else, like, who's sitting in their chairs, and, like, I'm kind of that distraction. I hate that. I hate nothing more than, like, being brought into attention. Yeah, man, I like being behind the camera. That's my role.
Yeah,
I'm cool with that.
But it's important to hear people's stories like yourself, Brian, because I think a lot of people can relate to some of your experiences. And, speaking of experiences and a lot of the things that, you've seen and you've done, 6 years in MLB, that's a long time. Like, you last longer than some of these, pitchers out here who, are in and out with Tommy John and whatnot. But, 6 years in, what are some of the experiences, I guess maybe on the field, that you've been able to see and you've been able to cover and you've been able to, create content on, as well as a couple experiences off the field, just being a part of the Guardians organization. Like, being here the past 8 months, I've seen it's probably a top tier organization in work culture in not even just like baseball, but in sports. Like, I'd have to say that because I haven't heard anyone speak of their work culture, and I've connected and networked with a few people within the sports in the sports world, and I haven't heard anyone explain their work culture and their organization like I've experienced the Guardians organization. So I guess maybe some things on you could start with on field, and then we could talk about off field afterwards.
For sure. And yet to echo that, like, in my role with MLB, I kind of got to have a 30,000 foot view of, the other 30 teams in the league. And it was like my boss with MLB at the time, like, kind of always described it, and like other people, that had the 30,000 foot view of like our organization, like always described Cleveland as kind of the gold standard. So like, that's not, you're not exaggerating. Like, it's a good place to work. It's a good culture. They genuinely care, about employees, which is like, you don't find that everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, so on the field, I'd say like experiences like I've had the pleasure to cover. Like, I mean, my first season was like it was really cool because like I grew up like Cleveland fan, like so it was kind of like being involved in the organization that first year was like it was like special to me because it was like this was always wanted to be a professional baseball player growing up.
Yeah.
Like, that was it. That was the job.
Right.
And, once you get to a certain point where you realize, maybe that's not going to happen.
Big time.
So priorities shift a little bit. But, yeah, it was cool to be part of the organization that first season. But the next year we had the All-Star game in Cleveland. And kind of being involved in that a little bit, even though, like, I wasn't, a Guardians employee. I wasn't involved in any, like, the planning or kind of anything. Other than that. Other than the events like themselves, which maybe was a saving grace because it was a lot of work.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But yeah, kind of being involved in that and seeing like, I remember I turned around. I was on the field pregame for, it was the home run derby. I turned around in the dugout, like I was standing 5 feet from Ken Griffey Jr. and like that was my favorite player growing up. Like.
That's awesome.
Like living legend, and I was like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And every now and then you kind of have those experiences where it's like, all right, this is sweet. Mm-hmm. So I've been a part of
Manny for me.
Yeah, that's cool. 6 years I've been here. 2 division titles. I think 2020 we technically won it. There's an asterisk next to that whole season though because the 60 game that was tough, but. Yeah, I mean 2 or 3 division titles. I think last year was really kind of a special season.
Big time.
Youngest team in baseball, and this team that nobody had expectations for going into the season. Like, and they kind of just put it all together, and it was really like fun to watch, really fun to be a part of. That was by far my favorite season. Like I've worked, in baseball, and kind of celebrating a division title, and then won the first round of the playoffs. Were a win away from the ALCS last year, so that was really cool. And being part of the All-Star game this year, that was the first like All-Star game I've been to that wasn't the one in Cleveland.
Yeah.
And I was outside of Jose and Augie, the translator. I was like the only person from our organization they're representing, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot that's happened over 6 years. That's been pretty special to me. I think off the field, my favorite experience, like, and I don't even think nothing else comes close to this, was going to the DR last year, the Dominican. So, a bunch of our players are from there. Jose, Oscar, Emmanuel Clase, Angel De Los Santos, like, so on and so forth. Fran Mill, Ahmad Rosario. So when it was me and, 2 of your immediate coworkers that went last year, along with like the ballet TV crew, and the idea was to kind of put a spotlight on those guys there, the Dominican Academy down there, and then we went down like I think it was the same weekend. I don't know if it was a weekend. It had to have been a weekend. As the international like signing day. So it was basically it was a culmination of like 3 or 4 days down there, where we went to, Jose's house, Ahmad Rosario's house, Oscar's house, and like kind of interviewed, the players, their families. It was Bally kind of doing that. We were there to cover. And then there was a play ball clinic down there that Jose hosted. Got to kind of see the field Jose grew up on. I think there's plans to like renovate that field, and I mean, it was just really, really a unique experience. I had never been outside the country other than the Canadian side of the falls.
Really?
Yeah. So that was cool to me. And I practiced my little bit of Spanish. Like took Spanish all those years in school. Did Duolingo for a little while. I kind of like. I had a hard time speaking it, but like
you can understand.
I understood it a lot better than I thought I was going to. And so kind of being immersed in that culture down there. And you hear all the time, like in baseball, this guy's from the DR. And it's like, that's cool. Like, yeah, he's from the DR, just another guy from the DR, etc. But like, I never really put 2 and 2 together of what that actually looks like. So going down there, to a third world country, and kind of seeing what these guys come up from and the fields they play on was like, man, it was like really eye opening. It was cool. Like, you know, Jose, one of the greatest players in the league. Like, yeah, and he grew up playing on this like sand lot covered in trash, and you know the mound is a PVC pipe, and yeah, like it was. You know, we're passing homes with dirt floors, and there's kids playing soccer bare feet. Like, it was just like, and I think like it was really good from a perspective standpoint too, because you know we're passing these kids on that field playing barefoot, like biggest smiles on their face, like
not a care in the world.
Yeah, it was like I don't know, man. I think we take for granted a lot, like, you know, the blessings like each of us has. Like we're really fortunate, like, to grow up, you know, in like the U.S.,
in the first world country.
US, like, you don't really realize like what you have, and those kids didn't realize what they didn't have, and we're still happy as could be, and like that was I walked away from that like kind of with a lot of perspective, and it was pretty special.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I've heard a lot of great things about that trip, and I know that, you know, they're planning to do that again and continue to help out the people down there. Jose is going to donate another field and work on another field in his name that he's donating a bunch of money to. So, yeah, I think what the organization is doing and what you guys are doing down there is super cool and it's super great. And, you know, I think it deserves to be recognized, you know, nationally, just how awesome the things you guys are doing. And like you said, perspective wise, like people don't think about that type of stuff. It's like it's not, it's, you know, you look at that Mariano Rivera clip that, you know, I'm pretty sure every baseball fan has seen, where he's like, he made a glove out of a piece of cardboard. Yeah, and this is the greatest pitcher of all time. And he started off playing with a piece of cardboard, whereas like, you know, here, you know, you're getting a new glove every couple of years, and it's like, you don't realize just how awesome you have it. But yeah, those were some pretty cool moments and you know, some pretty cool things. And I guess like to sort of finish off the podcast itself, what would be a few things or a few words that you might have for that person that's starting off in social media? Just because, you know, like I said earlier, it's becoming more and more valuable. It's becoming more and more like, you know, working on the, you know, accounts that the Guardians, you know, own and operate. That's, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people have eyeballs on it. And you're the first line of defense when it comes to fan interactions, especially from a digital sense. What would be like some words that you might have for, you know, someone that's starting off in the industry or aspires to be in the industry, or, you know, wants to be in your shoes one day? Because I'm sure there are hundreds of people, if not thousands of people, who would be like, you know, I'd love to create content for my favorite team one day.
Yeah. I mean, like, something like I think I kind of learned along the way, and I always, you know, advise people, like, if it's on interviews or just, you know, people that have reached out to ask kind of that same question, is like, and something I wish I had done sooner, because it's kind of a pain in the butt to put along after the fact, or put together after the fact. But having a portfolio is big, especially in like this industry. Like, what do you do that's different, can separate yourself, you know, from the rest of people? Like, you know, if you're applying for a job, like, you're gonna put together a resume, you're gonna put together a cover letter, like, and those are good things and necessary things, but like, what can you do? Like, you know, can you take pictures? Are you a videographer? You know, can you draw? Can you animate? Like, put together those things so that like people, you know, you're flipping through, you know, hundreds of resumes, and this one stands out because, like, look at this portfolio, like, this is amazing. Like, those are the things that are going to get your eyes, you know, beyond, you know, that initial phase of kind of screening. Get experience like where you can. I don't necessarily, like, I mean, sometimes there's a time and a place, and like you got to pay your dues, but like, I won't like advise people to like work for free. Like, I kind of did that like to start my career. And I don't regret that necessarily. But there's, you know, like, value your work. Like, if you're, you know, investing in yourself and putting together a skill set, a portfolio, etc. Like, you got to learn what your value is, and kind of what you deserve, more or less. But that being said, like, you're gonna have to pay dues along the way, and that might come in the form of like kind of doing things like other duties is assigned with an internship or something, and like that's part of sports, kind of more or less. If you want to get into content creation and like kind of the private sector a little bit, like, you might have a different experience. But like, if you're working for a sports team, like, you're gonna have some of those tarp poles, or whatever. If you're working in minor league baseball, some of those things kind of along the way. So just expect that, be willing to do that, be a good sport, be a good teammate, and just don't stop learning. Like, do what you can to seek out new information, build connections with people, network. Like, everybody knows somebody in the sports world, which is like, it's what I think makes it tough to get into, because like, it helps to know somebody. That being said, like, once you're in, like, everybody knows everybody. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I am within 2 or 3 degrees of separation of, I'd say, almost every major sports team, just through the connections I've made along the way. And like, you kind of get that over time. So yeah, just do those things, work hard. Don't get down on yourself when maybe you don't get that first job or that first internship, or whatever. Like, so I didn't get the Indians internship initially, right. And like that was that kind of sucked.
Tough, yeah.
That was tough. I'm a recently graduated kid, like, looking for that first break, and kind of thought that was it, and it wasn't. So, but everything worked out. An internship, typically is 1 year in and out the door. The job I moved into kind of didn't have an expiration date, outside of when MLB kind of killed the program. But it was like, once I was in that role, like, I was in that role. So that was kind of a blessing in disguise to not get that initial internship, because then it was like, okay,
we got multiple years of experience. That gave me a little more motivation to continue building up my skill set and kind of get good enough that they couldn't ignore what I've brought to the table. So try not to take rejections hard, because you're always going to end up where you need to be. And I mean, that's absolutely amazing advice. That's the perfect advice that I would give someone, because if a year ago me heard what you just said, like, I would have been in such a better mindset. But during those times where you're getting to the second, third, fourth round of an interview process, and you don't end up getting it, it's like dejecting, dude. It's like,
it's tough.
It's worse than losing a close game in basketball. It's worse than losing on a walk-off in baseball, because at least you have another opportunity to play the game. Like, it was dejecting, dude. And yeah, those similar experiences where, like, you won't get something, and you're kind of you're upset at the time, but then you end up being grateful, because that you're put in the right position. And I know you believe in God, I believe in God. Like, I know that he wouldn't do things without purpose. Like, he has purpose in everything that he does. So I always tried to understand that. I wish I understood that better at the time.
For sure.
I definitely understand it now after being in this organization this season. But yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by this podcast, Brian.
Why? Because I'm more than just a pretty face?
Right. Exactly, but that because if you were to see our daily interactions, you don't really get to see us talk like this. You don't really get to see that. It's a lot of jokes being cracked. It's a lot of funny moments, a lot of laughing and stuff like that, which is great, and I enjoy it so much. But it's good to get like those sit down, important conversations where you really just get to talk about the important things in life and how you're able to accomplish that. And I hope people who watch this are able to take things away from it, because I certainly am. And I've enjoyed speaking with you today, Brian. So thank you for coming on.
Thanks, T.
And if you have anything to promote, or yes, please promote your calendar. Please promote your social media channels. He's very active on his social media, guys.
Not a good salesman, though.
Yeah.
So I mean, my landscape photography.
Yeah.
And can you link something? Because
Yeah,
I don't even know what my link
I
is.
can link in stuff. Everything will be in the description.
Right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I sell prints, I sell canvases, kind of everything in between as well. Terrence will link that, but also doing a 2024 calendar that you can kind of contact me through my social media. About handle for Instagram, Twitter, where I'm most active is just first and last name, Brian, Brian, last name Havrilla, Havrilla. So that's the same on both those channels, but not a good salesman. I kind of let my products speak for themselves.
Yeah. All right. Well, appreciate you, Brian, and
Of course.
thank you all for listening. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like you lose one game and it's against a very, very good football team, and all of a sudden, I feel like we have this thing now with former players that are analysts that love to just trash on guys. Like I don't know if it's clicks or what it is, but I mean, we're tossing around terms like garbage, like trash, like sucks, and I'm like, you were a player once, like you know, like you don't. This game is hard. Yes, like can guys improve and play better? Yes. But I don't know where we got off now just throwing so much dirt on top of people when we were all in those shoes once. And yeah, you've had a bad game. You want to put up a low light reel of me? You could make me look like the worst player in NFL history. I mean, I've been crack blocked by a receiver and knocked on my ass before. You put that up, yeah, I look like garbage too. Like, I don't know. We can be critical without being just downright like ridiculous.
I know that everyone's shitting on him because he's like woke now.
Yeah.
I don't really care that I don't listen to. I'm not going to listen to any grown man's politics and then let it affect me at all.
Yeah.
You can go suck a dick if you think you're going to influence me. I'm 50 years old. I'll make my own fucking decisions. Suck a dick about everything. That's what blows me away.